What I want to do today is talk about something that is so important in helping businesses effectively navigate the cost of living crisis. So, as always, just remember, if you found this video useful, just remember to like, share, follow, and subscribe, and I'll get straight into it. So, one of the things that you may have noticed about the cost of living crisis is obviously it's increasing the cost of living for everyday citizens, but for business owners, what it's also doing is it's increasing the cost base for that business. What happens is if your costs go up and your prices stay the same, then your profits will decrease. So that is, as a business owner, that's really bad for you because what that's going to mean is you're going to be working the same hours or maybe even harder, and you're going to get paid even less for it. And or it could result in you having to pay your team less, which means they're likely to leave or you have a drop in performance. So we don't want that. That's the worst case scenario, really. So what we've got to do is today, what I really want to do in the video is just talk about how business can really deal with the cost of living crisis. And there's really quite often only one solution. You can always try and save costs. That's not the solution I want to talk about because often saving on costs. Let's say you've been running a business efficiently anyway. Generally, we assume that most businesses are quite efficient, and then any most efficiencies are quite small. So let's say you've been running your business quite efficiently anyway, then reducing a cost isn't really an option. But you're probably in a lot of pressure at the moment to pay your staff more because they've got their costs have gone up themselves. So the only other thing you can do in the cost of living crisis is essentially put your prices up. And this might this might sound quite mad in a time when people are really struggling themselves, like your everyday is the consumer is you might have heard it in the news, are buying less, but even though the overall economic performance hasn't dropped too much because prices are going up so much, but actually sales volumes have gone down quite a lot. So we can the only way any business can really deal with this is by putting their prices up. So what I want to talk about today is the best way to approach a price increase with your customers. And let's face it, if you don't handle a price increase correctly and you don't do it for the right reasons and you don't calculate it right, then it can pose a very, very real risk to your business. But the other side is if you don't do it at all, your business will probably fail anyway because you just won't be able to retain the staff. You won't be able to get paid what you're worth, and you're going to end up with a very serious challenge. So it's something that's risky, but you've got to do it, especially in this economic climate. So there's a couple of things we need to rethink about when we're really three things that we need to think about when we're pushing through a price increase. Firstly, what is the price increase? How are you going to calculate that? If you look at the cost of retail price index and it's saying, oh yeah, well it's at 9% at the moment, and then next year it could be 10%. Does that mean you just do a flat 9% increase throughout all your customer base and increase the prices that way? Or is there a better way to calculate it? Because let's remember, the retail price index is the economy as a whole. There'll be certain sections of the economy where essentially they may not have inflated, it may not have inflated by 9%. And there'll be other areas of the economy which have inflated by more than 9%. So you've got to have a really good understanding of what the inflation actually means for your own business, not the economy as a whole, because any price increases that you do need to recover that. And then and part of that also is also just whenever you're doing a price increase, you've got to work on a basis that you're probably not going to be able to do another one for a year or around a year. So you can't just react to what's currently going on. You've got to think a little bit further ahead as well. So it's an opportunity for you to think about what your competitors are doing if for a like service. If you've got people in your industry who are charging double what you are, even though they're delivering the same thing, then even though there might be a lot of pressure from your client base to keep your prices lower, it is still worth going in and getting paid what you're worth based on what everyone else in the industry is getting. So, inflation drives it partly, but also does your competitors. So that's definitely worth thinking about. So that's what one, how much to increase prices by. The second thing you really got to think about is how much of a notice period are you going to give people? Like ultimately, depending on the kind of business you run, it might just be the next time they come in, okay, the price has gone up, or it might be there might be a sign on next to the price list saying, okay, fine, next month the prices are going to go up, but at the moment they're steady. We might give them a couple of months' notice. So you do need to think about a notice period. It depends on your industry. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you don't need one at all. And then really the third thing is how you communicate it. So, I mentioned earlier, if you're running a shop, you might just have a board which says our prices have gone up, and this is the reason. But if you're running more of a service-based business, especially if you get subscriptions, then what you really need to do is send out some sort of letter or email explaining why you're doing it. And you've got to be really honest. And the most important thing about your communication is, and I've said this in other videos, don't have different prices for different customers. Make sure all your customers are always on the same price for that type of service, because people do talk, and if there's different prices for different customers, then it can create resentment and it can create distrust in your relationship with those customers. So yeah, it's that honest communication in the right kind of way. And as always, you've got to invite people if to have a discussion with you if they do need to talk about it. So those are really three things to focus on when you so it's really the communication method. It's about how much you increase in buy that's the most to give people. And if you get those three things right, yeah, the chance that you probably will lose some customers, but not as many as you think. And the other side of that is everything. There's nothing wrong with having a slightly smaller business that makes more profit and charges a bit more. So sometimes you can't be too afraid of losing that volume. So that's all I've got to say about the correct way to set out a price increase to your clients. And if you want any more advice on this, then do get in touch and go to our website, book yourself into a meeting with me. And what I just say is, don't ignore this. Don't ignore this video. It's got to put people who are burying their heads in the sand right now. They will suffer so much in 6 months. They won't be able to retain their teams. Their service standards are going to drop drastically. Their businesses will collapse. It has to be dealt with now, not in 6 months' time. So remember, yeah, if book yourself in for a meeting with me if you found it useful and want to talk about it. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.